Hari Om, friends. I'm just setting up this live stream, checking that I'm actually present, and I can see now that we've gone live. So I want to welcome you all to our 8th session of this wonderful LallaJayanti celebration. And tonight we have a team of speakers, not just one, and we're going to take a different approach. So I'll first introduce myself. I have a spiritual name, Malini, and my other name, my birth name is Sarah, which most Indians call Sara. You're welcome to call me anything you like. And we'll have some vaks, and they'll be recited in the Kashmiri by Veronica Pia, Jyoti Rastan, and they will both be assisting myself with the Kashmiri to recite those vaks that I'll respond to in a yogic context about yogic practice. We recognize that some of Lalla's sadhana was yogic practice, and then Jyotiji will recite some vaks, and we have a special guest tonight, Denise Hughes. Now, I'm a PhD student. Veronica and Jyoti I know from the core team Sharda, and they've been doing some incredible work, including teaching Sharda Lipi on Vyoma Labs, a course which I have happily been attending when I can. And they're producing a publication about Lalleshwari's vaks. And that will probably come out sometime early next year. And they work with Rakesh Kaulji, and he's a wonderful teacher. And our other guest, Denise Hughes, you'll all know from her work with the Universal Shiva Fellowship. And she lived with Swamiji for 15 years with her family, John, Shanna, and Viresh. And they've been, since then, they've been publishing all of Swamiji's teachings, which they've recorded into books. And they've done 10 so far, and they have only another 20 more to go. So let's all pray for Lalla's grace and Swamiji's grace that we get this immense amount of Swamiji's teachings available. I'd just like to make a brief introductory discussion for today. I'm going to quote from Jay Shrikak. The poet is endowed with the power to create wondrous and unheard of things. This power arises from the grace of Paravak, another name for poetic imagination or pratibha, which has its seat in the poet's heart and which is eternally in motion. So this is a kind of a fusion, it's a kind of pouring out of Lord Shiva's grace from the self. And we can all see that Lalleshwari was gifted. So Lalla's journey describes a number of signs along her life path that are addressed within also the wider canons of yogic literature, especially within our Kashmiri Shaivism. Her experience is that of a yogini. And so women have a unique experience of these practices, and because of the way that we interact with our world, being gendered, and we learn through the trials and tribulations of our incarnation to rise above these limitations. And we find that our lived household world, despite the fact that Lalleshwari has said to have left, we don't know if she's gone completely renunciate or whether she's gone back to her family home. But she does say that she stays, you know, that we are to stay within wherever we are and attain the self that way. And so the experiences of Lalla are kind of threshing ground for her to practice it to the vices that she discusses here. And we find in her some commonality with other Shaivite poets, particularly Akka Mahadevi. Both women endured difficulties specifically related to being women. They expressed indifference to the worldly trappings. They confronted scholars and book-learned knowledge as ineffectual. They challenged their seekers to go directly to the Supreme Lord through yoga, and they were carried along by this incredible love for Lord Shiva. So the first phase of Lalleshwari's journey entails difficulties ascribed to her spiritual inclinations in contrast to conventional worldly life, including abuse, insults, and taunts, for which Lalleshwari became a threshing ground that tested her idealism and determination to arise from common vices such as anger, desire, greed, and attachment. This ill treatment, according to the commentary of Kaudinya, should be seen as a coronation to a poor man. The aspirant should wander under false accusations on the principle that being dishonoured is on the path to acquiring merit. Hereby, he becomes cut off from the respectable castes and conditions of men, and the power of passionless detachment is produced. And I'd also like to refer to something that I read in the Tantra Loka of Sri Abhinavagupta, which says, in those who are zealous for future greatness, a misfortune drags with it a series of good fortunes. And we know from Abhinavagupta's life that he lost his mother at a young age. And when he responded to that, he said that the root attachment was cut, and that love is the root attachment. But the kind of love is the love of worldly things, the worldly incarnation, and those entanglements that we have with the sensory domain, and our attachments to finding joy in the sensory pleasures. So he was able to rise out of his hardship and suffering, and he was able to attain liberation. And that was one of the lessons that he learned, that he says helped him to attain that. And so I'm going to now move on to our first speakers. The first speaker will be Jyoti Rasdan, and I'll just turn you over to her now. Could you unmute your mic, please, Devi? You're now on Spotlight. You're ready to start.
Shall I start?
Yes.
There is only one universe and one God, its creator. That one unimaginable God incarnates repeatedly on earth in human form. The main purpose of God's incarnation is to guide humanity by preaching spiritual knowledge. And this is what Mata Lalleshwari's Vaks are about. Today I am going to recite some Vaks from Mata Lalleshwari. Shevam Setith Sheshkal Vuzum, Prakrat Hujum, Pavna Suiti, Lol Kinar Verlich Buzum, Shankar Lobum, Temi Suiti. Cutting my way through 6 forests of Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moh, Mad and Ahankar, I came upon the digit of the moon, Sastra, top of the head. By means of the practice of pranapan, that is by controlling my vital ears, the world of matter shrank for me. Then roasting my heart in the fire of love, I finally found my God. द्वादशां मंडल यस दिवस थैजे नास के पवन दार्य अनाहत रव स्वयं कल्पन अंति सैजे पाने सुदीर्त अर्जुन कास. He who knows Dwadchan Mandala as the abode of God and knows the constant sound that is borne upon, the prana rising from the heart to the nose, all vain imaginings flee from his mind. Without effort, naturally. He knows no God other than the self. nor need he worship any other god. Seth novui sandram novui, zalmai dutum navam novui, yanipet lalime tanaman novui, tanalalbo navam novichas. The chitta, the mind, is ever new. The ever-changing moon is new, and ever new the shoreless expanse of waters that I have seen. Since I, Lalla, have scored my body and mind, emptied it of dead yesterdays and tomorrows unborn, I live in the ever-present now, and all things always are to me forever new and new. वाक मानस क्वल अकुल न अते छपि मुद्र अते न प्रवेश रोजन शिव शक्ति न अते मोति कोहत सोई वक्तिश. Here there is neither word nor thought, transcendent nor non-transcendent. Here, woes of silence and mystic mudras cannot gain your attendance here. Even Shiva and Shakti tattvas remain not here. Even the somewhat that remains is the truth to know and to realize. Now over to Veronica.
Namaskar, everyone. I'll be reciting few vaks and I'll give an explanation to each one of these. This explanation, elaboration is a collective effort of our team, Core Sharda team, where we are in the process of releasing a document on our understanding and interpretation of Lalvaks. Definitely, we have referred all other books that are available on the subject to reach to this explanation, this about the Vaks. So I'll start reciting few. Ayas kaimi dishe, te kaimi vate, gats kaimi dishe, kozanvat, antidai legimai, tate, Chinese focus, Cosino Sat. From which direction did I come, and what road did I take? Which direction shall I go? How will I know the path? Right guidance will come to my aid. Only breathing discipline will lead me nowhere. Damadam kurmas, daman hale, prazalyom deep, the nanayam zat. Andirim prakash, nyabar thontum, gatirotum, the karmas thaf. With vigor, I practiced breathing with tenacity. My inner self shined in the light, reflected from the universal consciousness. In that light, I identified my true self. I let that light diffuse and I merged with the darkness or the nothingness where myself and Shiv could not be differentiated. This is the ultimate goal of uniting with Param Shiva. He Gora Parmeshwara Bhavatam Se Chai Antarbodh Dashvai Vapadan Kandpura Hu Kavturun the Hu Ha Kavatot. Hey Guru, my Lord, since you have deep and true knowledge, you only can tell me. Breath blown out and breath exhaled with wide mouth both originate from the navel area. Then why is one cold and the other one hot? And to this is the answer to the previous vak. Nabhistanas chai prakrat zalvini, hidistam yetipran vatgot, brahmandas pet chai sud nadivahvini, hu tavaturun tuha tavatot. Naval area has nature of fire, the sun. Therefore, the area is characterized by heat. The breath which goes up from navel area to the throat is warm. The moon is on Brahmand. Moon by nature is cool. Udana Vayu, which controls the region from throat to the head. When air is breathed out, it is cool. This is the reason why hu is cool and ha is warm. Sorgus Pires Bargus, Torgus Kesit Marim Tso. Andano Labumo, Choinis Vargas, Bukos Lal, Tai Mikya Nav. I wandered in the heavens and covered every bit there. I, on the back of the horse, jumped all over with ecstasy. I found your territory limitless, without any boundary. In your vastness, I lost my identity. I can't find myself. I did not see anyone named Lull there. Makaris Zanamal Solum Manas, Adme Labum Zanas Zan, Sui Yele Dutum Nishapanas, Sori Sui Taibuno Ke. When dirt of my mind vanished, it became like a mirror. I could see myself in this mirror. On seeing and knowing my real self, I could see Shiv very close to me, so close that I was one with him. My existence vanished and Shiva was all pervading. Gorkat Hridayas Mansbag Ratum, Gangazal Nervum, Tanataiman, Sade Zivan Muktipravum, Yamabai Solum, Polum Ak. I kept my Guru's words in my heart. I purified my body and mind with Ganga Jal. With my body intact, I got liberated from my limitations, from all the worldly bondages. I have no more fear of death, as I nursed only one in me, that one ultimate reality, that is pure consciousness. That's all. Over to Sara now.
Thank you, friends. I just need to do a little technical shift here from the computer into my room. So bear with me. I'm going to demonstrate for you some of the things that we think Lalleshwari was doing in her earlier spiritual process. This is my room where I take teachings from my teachers on Zoom. Okay. So Lalla refers to Nabistan, which is Manipura chakra, and she often refers to the pranayama breathing practices that she was doing. I'll just move this back a little. I hope that's okay. So I'm just going to sit for a moment just to center my breath. We know that Lalleshwari practiced some pranayama in a yogic way, and that she was within a cultural milieu that included tantrics, siddhas, and nath yogis. And we know also that Lalleshwari, after practicing these techniques, had an experience that describes the Kundalini awakening process. And from there, she left her pranayama practices, and she later stated that these practices will not be enough. Now, even in the Hatha Yoga teachings, we know that it's not the mechanism purely that is the awakening agent. It must be done with awareness in the same way that we perform all actions as tantrics, and with the mind centered on God consciousness if possible. But in those early days, Lalleshwari was sifting and threshing, and she talks about being wanting to bloom like the cotton flower and being washed and carded and spun and woven and cut. She talks about a process with her guru, also where she was, she was threshed and she was, she purified the impurities of her mind. But she refers to, in the verses which Veronica has just read out to you, and I'm going to give another interpretation here. In Dharmadam, it says, I forced the breath slowly down the bellows throat. So this is referring to Bastrika Pranayama. I lit a lamp and what I was came into view. So the self comes into view through the burning of this fire that is awakened in Manipura chakra, which burns away the impurities or the fetters, the samskaras, the vasanas, and the chittavrittis. I winnowed the light inside, scattering it out. I grabbed the dark and held it fast. O Guru Parameshvara, please teach me, you know the inner meaning. The two are born in the city of the bulb. Why is Ha cold and Ha hot? The region of the navel is by nature burning. Prana rises up to the throat and meets the river flowing from the skull. That is why Ha is cold and Ha is hot. Now, I know there's other different interpretations of these. However, these do refer to the Kund being where the Kundalini, the nadis arise from, which is the bulb underneath Manipura or Nabistan. There's 72,000 nadis. The most important of these is the Sushumna, which arises up in the center of the spinal column, and Ira and Pingala, which is cool and warm. So these hot and cold actually refer to a number of different things in yoga, and they can refer to the inhalation, which is cool, and the exhalation, which is warm. They can refer to the fire, which is roused through this process we're going to do in a moment, which rises up from below. And once we reach the throat, these drops of nectar, which are cooling, start flowing down, they say, from the full moon or from Bindu. And they're caught with the practice of Khechari Mudra, and they're the Amrit. So that's supposed to give us longevity, but it also becomes intoxicating and blissful, and that allows us to become completely withdrawn in pratyahara and engaged and immersed in our one-pointedness. And this prana goes through 3 stages, where it's first dense, and it's like a liquid and fire, kind of like that, and light. And then it rises up and it becomes like droplets. You breathe them in and they become ecstatic, and then it becomes expansive, Parashakti. So you have Prana Shakti, Chit Shakti, and Parashakti. So I force the breath slowly down the bellows throat. I'm just going to find the part here. Under the control of prana and apana, the fragmented consciousness runs up and down along the left and right pathways. It cannot be seen due to its febrility. Just as a falcon tied by a string can be pulled back even after going, so too the fragmented consciousness tied by the knots of material nature is drawn back by means of prana and apana. Apana pulls on the prana and prana pulls on the apana. These are the 2 forms of the life force, respectively, situated above and below the navel. The Noah of yoga joins these 2. The jiva goes out with the sound ha and again enters with the sound sa. Thus, the jiva continually recites the mantra hamsa, hamsa. So we hear this this described by Lalleshwari later. The Gayatri mantra, named Ajapa, is a bestower of liberation upon the yogis, and one is released from all sin merely by making the resolution to recite it. Having arisen from the Kundalini, this Gayatri is the preserver of the prana life force. It is the science of the prana, the great science, and the one who knows it is the knower of yoga. She refers to the Kund, the bulb. The Kundalini power remains above the bulbous root, Kunda, coiled in 8 rings, her mouth always covering the opening to the doorway to Brahman. When the auspicious Kundalini is awakened through contact with the fire, she takes the form of an aroused serpent, and then appearing like the filament of a lotus, moves upward through the Sushumna. Cupping the hands and very tightly assuming the lotus posture, pressing the chin deeply on the chest and meditating on his most desired object, the yogi should repeatedly lift the apana air upward, expelling the air that has been taken in. Thus he attains equal understanding through the awakening of the Kundalini power. The yogi who knows the Mahamudra, Nabo Mudra, Udyan Bandha, Jalandhar Bandha, and Mula Bandha is eligible for liberation. These all are practiced with this Bhastrika breath. I'm going forward now for afterward. The supreme light wherein is situated the threefold power of Shakti is action, will, and we say knowledge, associated with Brahma, Rudra, and Vishnu, respectively, is Om. So the 4 verses which Veronica has read are also followed by one. So after she's done her pranayama, I'm suspecting that she writes this vak. My mind boomed with the sound of Om. My body was burning coal. 6 roads brought me to a 7th, and that's how Lalla reached the field of light. The interpretation would be that the 6 roads that brought her to the 7th are the 6 chakras. To practice this technique, it's best to sit in, well, some people sit in, they sit in all different poses, but I'm going to sit in Siddhasana. Why? Because the left foot is actually, this is Siddha Yoniasana, which is for women. The left foot is blocking the base chakra, so that apana is forced to stop going out. It just stops it there, because we want the apana is the downward flowing. And what that does is it's continually dragging our energy down and outward into the world. So if we want to restrain the senses and we want to restrain the pranas, we lock them in. So this is Siddha Yoniasana. And the bellows breath is called Bhastrika. In this Yoga Tarangani and in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, it talks about doing the bellows breath in the left and the right nostrils. But just for demonstration, I'll do it the way my Guruji taught me. And so you take a deep breath first in. And then take a deep breath out and just relax. Close the eyes and become aware of Brahmodaya. Some people like to gaze at the nose tip. Take a few deep breaths and relax. The other similar breath is called Kapalabhati, but that's slightly different. So the bellows is when the belly comes out and goes in equally. I'll show you. You inhale and then and what this does is it builds heat and fire. Okay, because that helps to arouse the apana to come upward, and it gives you that heat that you need for your tapasya to burn the defilements, as they're called. So if you practice this for a while, what happens? It's not sirens normally. That was just some bit of drama. What happens is you have the apana and the prana, which meet here. They're constantly rubbing against one another. So it creates friction, and that friction creates heat. And then when you've done one round, you exhale. And this is where this Maha Mudra comes in. Block off your base chakra by pulling up Mula Bandha. Suck in your tummy, Uddiyana Bandha. Lock the throat, Jalandhara Bandha. And take the tongue back. And then gaze at the mid-eyebrow. I'll just do it briefly. Then you breathe out, and then you breathe in. What happens there is you with the vacuum, you're sucking the apana upward. So you've created this heat, and then you're forcing it upward, and it connects with the prana, which forces the pranas into the Sushumna. And then when the neck is raised, this blissful energy comes up, and blissful energy also comes down because you've activated that throat chakra, and you've created this force that stimulates the bindu to flow down as well. So when you take your head up, there's normally a blissful sensation that arises. If this is practiced again and again and again, the process is that the fire of Kundalini arises, and then it becomes more and more subtle, and the Anahat chakra is purified, and that's when the prana changes form and into this sort of refined, expansive state of consciousness, which we call Chit Shakti. And in the heart, this is where the Om begins to, the Anahad Nad begins. And so she says afterward, my mind boomed with the sound of Om, but her body was burning coal. Okay, so she's still having this process of tapasya. The 6 roads brought me to a 7th. So after the heart chakra, Granthi is unblocked. You have Granthis here, here, and here. Here. Then the prana comes up through the central channel. If you're lucky, it goes up the Chitrini, and it starts to knock on this Brahmarandra here. And we have the Dwadashanta actually outside the skull, and we have some breathing practices which are far more advanced than this type of thing. But the idea is that this Brahmarandra here is pierced, and then this Kundalini Shakti comes up through the spine, and it pours out, and you merge with the void, the self with the self. And this is the process of the 6 roads that brought Lalleshwari to the 7th, and that's how Lalleshwari reached the field of light, which is the crown chakra Sahasra, and it's a big white moon. Some people call it like a big white lotus, and that is what this Hatha Yoga approach to her early practices implies. So now I've done my little part. I'm going to take this back in to the computer, and I'm going to hand you over to Jyoti, who's going to recite some more, and then Denise is going to take over with the transcendental stuff and with the trika. You're on.
Thank you, Malini, for nice presentation. Now I'm going to recite some Vaks of Mata Lalleshwari. Azapa Gayatri Hamsa Zepit Ahamas Trevit Sui Adaret Yemtro Aham Sui Rud Pane Bono Asun Chui Vaptish Kando Gehteje Kando Vanvas Beful Manna Retif the Vas Denrat Gunzir Panun Shwas Yuthi Chui Chukta Tuthias Posh Posh Tel Deep Zalna Gache Sadba Warkat Yusmani He Shambua Swarya Nyat Pani Yathe Sada Paze Sehaj Akreina Ze Kundro Bozak Kunno Rozak Kundran Kornam Hanyakar Puni Ursit Donhund Jangom Sui Berangom Karit Rang Sahaja Shamta Damno Gathe Yesno Pravak Mukti Dwar Silas Lavanzan Milet Gathe Tote Shidorlap Sahaj Vichar. Now, I welcome Dennis to please give the interpretation of all the vaks I have recited. Over to Dennis.
Okay, how do I get rid of this window here?
You're on Spotlight, so just go ahead.
Right. I had a message there. Namaskar, everyone. I'm happy to be here this morning. So I'm going to recite Jai Shri, the author of the translation of Lalleshwari and her vaks. And I will first give you her translation, and then I'll discuss the vak in terms of Kashmir Shaivism. Recite Hamsa with every breath. Renounce the self and meditate on the self. Whoever renounces the self finds the self. Mentally recite the mantra Hamsa silently as you breathe. Think hum as you inhale and sa as you exhale, and continue in continuity. Hum means I am, and sa means Shiva. I am Shiva. Although Swamiji said to think that you're Shiva at this point is so great, you know, but he said, think that I am he, and we all know who he is. Reject the thought that you are a limited being. Always think that you are Shiva, but don't brag to others you are Shiva, because if you do, Lord Shiva will put you to task. You must understand that the limited self and universal self both exist within every human being. Meditate wholeheartedly with excitement for your meditation without missing a breath. And if you can maintain the continuity of awareness, you will enter into your divine self, which is Shiva. Next vak. Some renounce their home and some their hermitage. All is futile. If the mind is not under control, meditate on your breath. Some people leave their homes or hermitages in hope of becoming free from family responsibilities and household worries. They're renouncing. They feel they must renounce their life as a householder or even as a monk. They believe they would be able to meditate more peacefully and make more spiritual progress if they abandon their home and go somewhere else. But the problem is, if we renounce the life we had, we may miss the people and possessions we had at home. When Swamiji was 16 years old, he left his family home secretly and went to Sadhu Ganga, a well-known spring near Baramulla, Kashmir. He was full of detachment for the world, and his only desire was to sit and meditate day and night. Much later, Swamiji said that while he was meditating in the forest, certain thoughts would come into his mind. He remembered the beautiful tea set and gramophone he had in his bedroom. He then realized that he had physically left his possessions, but still carried the thoughts and attachment for them in his mind. Swamiji realized that detachment doesn't work. He said, if you want something, then have it, and then the longing for it will go away. You'll feel detached, but if you want it and don't allow yourself to have it, then the longing continues to persist. If the mind is restless and you cannot meditate, at that time on mantra, then meditate on your breath. And if that too isn't successful, then go outside and work in your garden. Sometimes the mind is so busy, making so much noise, telling us so many things, it's not possible to meditate. So go outside and enjoy the sun and the garden and the earth, and you'll get refreshed. Okay, the next one, the next vak is no need for kusa grass, flowers, sesame seeds, lamp, or water. Whoever accepts the teacher's words in simple faith and remembers Shambhu, Shiva, daily of his own volition, absorbed in all pervasive, unobstructed sound, becomes liberated. There's no need for kusa grass, flowers, sesame seeds, lamp, and water for doing puja. If the devotee has surrendered with full faith in their guru's words and internally by their own will remember Shiva in all of their daily activities. Swamiji once told us that to remember Shiva means to watch your breath. They will become absorbed in the pervasive sound of the bliss and consciousness of the universe and become liberated in life. Next one. When you grasp non-duality, you lose self-consciousness. The experience of the unity in duality has erased my self-consciousness. Even though it is one, the conflict from duality persists. The colorless one has dyed me in the worldly colors. When one experiences the oneness of all things and perceives that only the bliss of God consciousness permeates the whole universe, then our limited self takes an end. We are not fully merged in Shiva, but are just like Shiva until the time of leaving the body, and then we merge with him fully and completely. As long as we still have a body, we can't be fully merged in Shiva. Next vak. For self-knowledge, self-restraint, and breath control are not enough. Liberation is not achieved through wishing alone. Though you are completely absorbed in the self, like salt dissolved in water, it is still rare to know the truth about the self. For self-realization, yogic disciplines like self-restraint and breath control cannot help our journey to self-realization. Wishing to become liberated has no power. It can't be certain that being completely absorbed in the self will guarantee moksha and the end to samsara, repeated births and deaths. So that was the last one. Shall I say something else, Sarah? Malini?
Yeah.
Denise, you can. you can conclude the session if you want to, like the highlights of just sum it up in a nutshell.
Yes. Is it time?
Yes,
It's time enough.
Okay.
Yeah, we've done enough.
Well, it's very important to have a spiritual practice that you do every day, maybe twice a day, morning and evening. And that you study the scriptures and you understand them and apply them to your life. And just know that if you're a householder, that's perfectly fine. You don't have to go to the forest. Once I asked Swamiji, I said, I was feeling fed up with everything and I wanted to go to the forest. I wanted to go live in a cave, I said. I was very young at that time, 23 or 4. And he said, no, Shaivites don't do that. He said, they stay in the world and they practice meditation in the world, in action, in seated meditation. They don't run away. They'll be having all these thoughts of their possessions and their families. And then doing havans, doing pujas are all very important. And I think all of us do those. We have havans for Swamiji. We celebrate Swamiji's Mahasamadhi, which we'll be doing shortly on September 5th. And we do puja. And I'm sure you all do probably the same thing. And it's an important practice. It gives us strength. It gives us blessings from the gods, Shiva. And when we experience the oneness of all things, then we understand and feel the bliss of God consciousness. And God consciousness not only permeates the consciousness of the individual, but God consciousness permeates the whole universe. Everything is already filled with God consciousness. We just have to realize it. And before we close, I wanted to recite the Agora mantra, which was very dear to Swamiji and very powerful for this age. It's about the energies that lift us up and the energies that make us feel stuck and the energies that pull us down. And we're all praying for those energies, the Agora energies that lift us up. So I'll recite this verse. Agorebhyo tagorebhyo Gora gora tari vescha Sarvata sharva sarvebhyo Namaste rudrarupebhya Agorebhyo tagorebhyo Gora gora tari vescha Sarvata Sharva Sarvebhyo Namaste Rudrarupebhya Agorebhyo Tagorebhyo Gora Gora Taribhescha Sarvata Sharva Sarvebhyo Namaste Rudrarupebhya. Thank you for having me here today. I thank Swamiji for allowing me to be here today to share a few things that I've studied and learned. Namaskar.
Namaskar. Thank
Now,
you.
before we end this session, I would like to thank you all, Jyoti ji, Sarah, Denise, for being with us today. It was really a very refreshing session. and a wonderful explanation on the breathing exercises and the meditation. It was lovely to have you all, and we are grateful to have listened to you. Thank you. Thank you for being with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Namaskar.
Namaskar.
Thank you.